suffering, corruption. It ends today. The mandate of heaven is lost. The Han must be overthrown. Our strength is not in our steel, but in our numbers. The yellow sky must rise. And until it does, the earth will run red with blood!
Well, we got a lot of news about Total War 3 Kingdoms today, and the topic that has reared its ugly head in every major Total War release in the last 6 years has surfaced once again. Go figure. Pre-order DLC, everyone's favorite. I don't know, feels like we've been here before. A little dose of deja vu that returns on a semi-annual basis now. And honestly, it should not come as a surprise. It happened with the Greek states, it happened with the Viking forefathers, it happened with the Warriors of Chaos, and it pretty much happened with Norska as well. Day 1 DLC, that one side claims is cut-up content that should be part of the base game no matter what, and that the other side claims was made with a separate budget and a separate team, and was only completed because it's a better way to spend the marketing budget than buying traditional advertisements. So let's add our voices to the circle jerk that has no end, that I imagine will continue well into the future as developers and consumers continue to clash on this subject, and discuss the Yellow Turban Rebellion pre-order bonus, the release date, and all the Three Kingdoms information that dropped today. I gotta say, that opening shot of the evil-looking dude grabbing pots of gold is hilarious. I'm not sure if it shows a stunning lack of self-awareness or a high level of self-awareness, and it's just meta commentary from the devs themselves, knowing how pre-order shenanigans come across to customers, but either way, it's a great picture. And at least from one side of the argument, it's a perfect symbol and a rallying cry for people who hate these kinds of business practices. Guarantee that thing right there is gonna become a meme. Now, I'm really not one for the outrage culture that has risen on both sides of the aisle in recent years. Both sides, whether you're talking about politics, gaming, or politics and gaming, like that steaming turd blossom of a debate over Rome 2 recently. I think these issues are usually more nuanced and complex in how they're represented in forum arguments or, God forbid, on YouTube. And I think there's a level of respect for people with differing viewpoints that has kind of been lost because it's really easy to strawman and attack someone personally from behind the safety of a computer screen. So we're going to try to look at this a bit more objectively from both sides of the argument and just have a simple discussion about it. And look, I get that topics like this get people heated, and I pride myself and our little corner of the internet for pretty much never having to moderate, delete comments, or ban people. But if you find your blood pressure rising and feel the need to threaten or insult someone, don't. Take a second, take a deep breath, and relax, bro. It's just a game. Now, I'm not gonna go into the full SJW, anti-SJW circle jerk for Rome 2. Nobody's gonna come out a winner there, and I think there is plenty of silliness to go around. But I will say, no community manager should be telling their customers not to purchase their game. I think they know that. I'm sure they've been talked to about it. It's bad PR and the exact opposite message that a company should be sending to their customers. And I think it blew that whole situation up into something that it didn't need to be. Now, whether it was still going to blow up anyway, I have no idea, but it certainly exacerbated the issue. Moving on the other hand, we still have very little information and even less gameplay for Three Kingdoms Total War. We just got a release date, March 7th, 2019, which is honestly quite a bit earlier than I was expecting, but I wouldn't be surprised if it gets delayed again, because we've been seeing that a lot with recent Total Wars. We still don't know the majority of the playable warlords, although we can make some very educated guesses. We still don't know many of the new game mechanics that will differentiate factions, and we don't know how many of the changes to diplomacy, economy, or strategy will actually make the game stand out amongst its peers, if they even exist. And so, in the midst of an ongoing debate about women generals and a lack of Warhammer 2 content and bug fixing, the timing on this reveal that the Yellow Turban Rebellion will in fact be Day 1 DLC seems, on the surface, pretty absurd. I mean, we're talking dangerously low public order here. And I think people have the right to feel that way. Being sold what feels like cut content before we've had a chance to hear how the vast majority of the game will play or work is not a great way to get your fan base on your side. I don't think this pre-order information should come before campaign gameplay reveals. I don't think it should come before we know all the base game playable factions, before we have much more information overall to make an informed decision on whether to purchase or not. But functionally, I'm not sure it changes much. We knew faction DLC was coming. There has been a pre-order faction for every Total War game since 2013, and the majority of them have been revealed months and months and months before launch day ever rolled around. But this announcement does change the timeline in one very important way, and it's sneaky, and it's kind of smart. Doing it this way, CA can get rid of all the animosity and anger well before release day, giving Backlash a ton of time to dissipate. And they just announced it right before a major campaign pack DLC for Warhammer 2, which will also quickly take the heat off. A lot of people have been saying it's a terrible time to release this information because there's already so many other debacles going on and what have you. I'd argue it might be the exact opposite. It might be a perfect time because just like with the Warriors of Chaos DLC, they announced it 6 months in advance. Public order in the community gets super low. I mean, it already kind of was. There's tons of backlash. Then by the time release day rolls around, it's pretty much forgotten because we've had mostly good news for the preceding 5 months. Look, whether you want to admit it or not, these pre-order debacles have not ultimately hurt their bottom line. If they did, if CA were really feeling it in their wallet after the Greek states, or the Viking forefathers, or the Warriors of Chaos, or Norska, they would stop doing it. It's that simple. The reason it continues to happen is because the average consumer, the one who doesn't frequent Reddit, or watch many YouTube channels, or vent on the forums, doesn't care. And that a lot of the people who say, enough is enough, I'm never giving CA money again, are ultimately still going out and buying their games. Rome 2 is, I believe, the best-selling Total War game of all time, and Total War Warhammer was a huge breath of life back into the series, and also sold exceptionally well. Both had massive pre-order debacles with huge community backlash, but ultimately, it didn't matter. People went out and bought those games in record numbers. The Total War series has never been healthier than in the wake of Warhammer 1 and Warhammer 2, and there's a reason why they're expanding so much and working on so many different projects right now. Is that a good thing? Well, I have my doubts. I think a lot of us have gotten pretty frustrated with the delays and multiple teams' explanations and wondered how accurate that bit of PR really is, when we can see firsthand that bug fixing is moving at a snail's pace, that patches only come with paid content releases, that their most recent games aren't getting that high frequency loving that we would really like to see. That's very frustrating. And I think the community has done a pretty good job of holding their feet to the fire and making it clear they don't find it acceptable. But as long as the marketing matches up with the final product, it has a relatively stable release, and we get frequent updates and communication in the run-up to launch day, most or all the bad will from this move is going to dissipate, just like it did with Rome 2 and Attila and the Warhammer games. Is Day 1 DLC a consumer-friendly practice? Should we be happy about it? Hell no, obviously not. CA are doing it because it makes them money, not to benefit consumers and not out of the goodness of their hearts. I don't think anyone is jumping for joy over this, and I guarantee you the community managers don't relish having to relay the information either. But here's the biggest issue I have with the other side of the argument, and I hear it a lot, that they're forcing people into a situation where you have to put money down on a game when you have no idea whether or not it's going to be good, where you'll have no idea whether it's worth your hard-earned money or not. And I do not agree with that at all, and here's why. For one, you do not have to pre-order right now. You should not, period. It's 6 months out. We don't know a ton about the game, but we will. Their marketing in January and February and early March is going to focus exclusively on Three Kingdoms once Escape and Elizabeth Lord Pack drops. There will be Twitch streams, there will be campaign gameplay uploaded to the official Total War channel, there will be interviews and blog posts and faction spotlights, and then there will be early release content from YouTubers like myself and reviewers and hours and hours and hours of pure gameplay. And then that will continue for a week after launch day, during which time you will have more than enough time to watch, read Reddit, read the forums, watch YouTube videos, and basically just take the pulse of the community on how the game is doing. I think it is very hard to argue that you will not be able to make a well-informed decision on whether to purchase Three Kingdoms Total War or not come the 7th day after release. By that point, you will have had close to 2 weeks of watching and reading pure gameplay, reviews, and opinions to make that decision if you're still on the fence. Angry Joe's Rome 2 review came out, I think, 6 days after release date on September 3rd, 2013, but the forums were already in an uproar with how terrible the game was, well before that point. It was only a day or two after launch that backlash started mounting, that the bugs started piling up, that people realized, hey, my god, this is the worst launch in Total War's history, and it's not even close. If that happens with Three Kingdoms, you will see that well within the week-long grace period you have to get the Yellow Turbans as a playable faction included in the base game. So while in principle, I can agree with the ideal never pre-order ever, there comes a point where you've seen more than enough to know whether the game will outright burn you or not, or whether it will be worth your money. Three Kingdoms will reach that point. And since those days, those terrible, dark days of Rome 2's launch and the aftermath of it, whether you hate them as a dev or not, CA have gotten infinitely better at giving reviewers and content creators early access to their game, to thoroughly test them, to thoroughly play them, and give feedback in general. I don't think this is a widely held belief, so I'm not sure it's even worth addressing, but there are some people who think we're not honest. That the only way Total War content creators will continue to have a relationship with the devs is by constantly filleting them. That we just gush over whatever the newest game is and never offer balanced feedback. Those people don't watch my videos, they haven't been paying attention, and they're 100% wrong, but I have seen that opinion expressed before. I'd like to think I have a good working relationship with CA at this point. I know some of the devs personally, but I always have been and always will be upfront and honest when I get my hands on their games. You guys saw that I weighed the positives and negatives, and there were definitely some negatives during my hands-on experience with Three Kingdoms earlier this year, and most of the Total War content creators were very vocal about the flaws with Thrones of Britannia, and I personally made barely any content for it after my impressions videos because it just wasn't what I wanted from a Total War game. I didn't think it was that fun, and I let you guys know the long list of issues that I had with it. Same thing when I made a video explaining that game-breaking Helibron bug with her cursed blade, which was profoundly embarrassing considering that she was literally the focal point of the entire DLC, and myself and Oakley made a 30-minute video together explaining everything that was wrong with Sieges and Warhammer and how they're significantly worse than the ones we've had in historical Total Wars. I have consistently expressed frustration with the pace of patching and content updates in Warhammer, and so on and so forth. I can and do criticize and discuss these kinds of issues because I want Total War games to be as good as possible, and they won't get better if you only tell the devs what they want to hear. So does Party Elite, so does Pixelated Apollo, so does Oakley. They've all given great feedback and criticism when and where it's needed. And if you don't trust those names for whatever reason, that's completely fine. Angry Joe and a lot of other bigger YouTubers will be getting Three Kingdoms early as well. Being critical and being honest will not get you blacklisted. Did Angry Joe get blacklisted after absolutely eviscerating Rome 2 on release? No, of course not. But bringing a bunch of public or political drama to the table or personally attacking the devs might. But with that said, I would really like to see everyone who has gotten blacklisted by CA in the past to get a chance to play Three Kingdoms early, and I think it would show a lot of confidence in their product if CA extended that olive branch and reached out to people like Legend, who in my opinion absolutely deserves to get the game early. You don't have to agree with everything he says, but I think he's an example of someone who's an important voice for the community, and he deserves to get pre-release access. But just the fact that CA invited content creators to play the game 8 months before launch, and will presumably do so again before March 7th, is a far cry from how Rome 2 was handled. No one got early access to the game, it just didn't happen. We saw very little gameplay, there was no live streaming, we pretty much went in completely blind. And so yeah, that was anti-consumer in every possible sense of the word, because a lot of people got screwed, and the community didn't get a chance to figure out, hey, this game is broken, before it was already released. But for Three Kingdoms, we literally sat down with the devs for 2 hours, giving them feedback, telling them everything we liked about the play session, and everything that we hated, and we made it very clear that the animations were janky, that the UI needed significant work. I told them explicitly that the generic green and red unit symbols are cartoony, immersion breaking, and bad for the game when they could easily be replaced by faction or warlord specific banners, and they listened, they took notes, and they took our opinions on board. Now, will that translate to the final product? I have absolutely no idea. I hope so, and if they don't, and if the game is playing like trash and not a step forward for the franchise come March 7th, I will let that be known in my early access videos provided I get the game. You will have more than enough information to make an informed purchasing decision. That I can promise you. So look, I get the frustration. Pre-order DLC debacles like this one are not a good thing for consumers. Clearly, people are not happy with this happening again, and everyone has the right to feel that way. But we are a far cry from the days of Rome 2, where no one got early access, where there was no pre-order grace period that could prevent you from being screwed, and where Steam refunds didn't really exist. Consumers simply have more protection than they did back then, at least in the Total War sphere, in large part because of horrendous releases like Rome 2. Ultimately, does it feel kinda gross? Yes. In principle, does it kinda suck? Yes. Will it actually affect you, the consumer, in a tangible way? Maybe. But I think pre-order shenanigans like this would have disappeared a long time ago if it wasn't profitable, which means consumers aren't always doing what they say they're going to do on Reddit, on the official forums, and the comment section of Total War's YouTube videos. But with all that said, what are we actually getting from the early adopter bonus? What is the content actually on offer? And is it all going to be worth it? I mean, that last part, can't really answer that yet because we know so damn little about the game. But for a simple recap, the Yellow Turban Rebellion was a peasant revolt against the ruling Han dynasty that basically kicked off the Three Kingdoms period overall. It was in response to widespread famine, corruption, and poor farmers basically just getting bullied by the rich and by the powerful. There will obviously be some historical anachronisms here because CA will really want to get most of the major players of the period on the board at once, but from what it sounds like, by the time the game's campaign starts, the Yellow Turban Rebellion will have mostly been quelled, and its main leaders like Zhang Jue would have been captured and killed by this point. So they're no longer the huge threat that forced all the heroes of the time period to unite and crush them. They've been scattered, divided, and conquered. They're no longer major players, and it'll be your job to try to reignite the flame of their rebellion and begin anew. They'll have 3 new playable warlords, He Jin, Gong Du, and Wang Shao, and 3 new hero classes, which are Healer, Scholar, and Veteran. Differentiating all those in the Records mode is going to be pretty challenging, I think. I have no idea how they're going to do it, but from the romance fantasy perspective, I could see some pretty cool things being done with healers on the battlefield, which we've never seen in a pseudo-historical or historical Total War. I'm getting a lot of Eco-Iki vibes with them, honestly. Kind of a similar movement to the one we saw take place in Shogun 2, with religious zealots, mysticism, disgruntled soldiers, and former officials all banding together, united in this common cause. And there will apparently be a brand new approach to technology, focusing on the 3 books of Great Peace, which are these Taoist tomes that dealt with spirituality, cosmology, philosophy, and basically the full ideology, the ideological backing behind the entire movement, and kind of the Bible, as it were, of the Yellow Turban Rebellion. And then we'll be getting new character skills, new weapons, and new armor for each of their heroes, which all sounds great, but it doesn't mean very much. If it seems kind of silly to you that CA is advertising a brand new approach to technology and new character skills when we don't even know how they're gonna work or function in the base game, you're not alone. It's weird, dude. It's really weird. It's kind of stupid. But like I said, I think it's calculated. I think they actually know exactly what they're doing here. It just seems kind of dumb on the surface. And I actually think it might be smart in its own bizarre way. No matter what, this is always going to be a divisive issue every time a new game comes out. And so they basically just want to pile on all the anger now, get it out of our systems early, and then start making people happy again with the Warhammer content and historical gameplay reveals as we get closer to launch. Does the Yellow Turban Rebellion DLC have me hyped? No, not really. I think so much of this game is going to revolve around things that aren't necessarily flashy and won't just grab you right off the bat when you watch a trailer or something. It's obviously got a beautiful aesthetic, but at the end of the day, it's still going to be similar culture groups and styles of warfare across most of the main warlords. Warhammer thrives on its battles, its amazing faction variety, and the incredible impact of seeing so many unique units clash on over-the-top battlefields. Three Kingdoms certainly has that unique and interesting aesthetic going on, but just by default, it can't really match Warhammer from a variety perspective. So it's the core campaign mechanics and how they actually function in practice that will determine how good this game actually ends up being. Warhammer could kind of get away with some stuff just being adequate because of the things it does so well, but it will be even more painfully obvious in Three Kingdoms if stuff like this new spy system don't work very well in practice, if the mechanics are watered down and simplified, and if the strategy just is kind of lacking overall. Those are things CA are going to have to absolutely nail, and if they don't, and it has a crappy release with poor post-launch support, it could end up being a disaster, because I can pretty much guarantee it's a very expensive game to make. It does sound like it could be a very unique and challenging campaign for the Yellow Turbans themselves, starting as the remnants of this shattered rebellion and trying to rebuild from nothing as you spread the way of peace throughout China. And that would obviously be great if that's how it plays out, and they actually feel unique and distinct compared to the base warlords, but we need to know a whole hell of a lot more before we make any kind of purchasing decision. I really think CA needs to throw historical lovers a bone here and give them some real, tangible information about how the records mode will actually differentiate itself, rather than just being simply romance mode with no Super Saiyan abilities. At the end of the day, we're at least 6 months from release, and all this information will be made available in time. Of that I have no doubt, but it's no big surprise that the community is frustrated with marketing tactics like this, because it's just not, it doesn't feel good. It's not fun. And I hope we can start getting the answers to questions we've been asking since launch very, very soon. But for those who are kind of predicting the failure of this game and the utter ruination of the series based on this debacle, these pre-order shenanigans, I wouldn't. It's currently sitting at the second top selling game in China right now, 6 months out from launch, and if CA can keep the Chinese government happy and not get sales banned there, we could very well be looking at the best-selling Total War game of all time. Only time will tell, but breaching into this new market, like, there's a very good chance that the game's going to sell very well. Let me know what you all think about what I've said, your opinion on yet another pre-order bonus debacle and controversy, and how you think the Yellow Turban Rebellion can best be represented in Three Kingdoms Total War. As always, thank you all for watching. I'll be curious what you guys have to say. I'll see you all in the next video. Indie Pride, signing out for now. Have a good one, guys.